Benjamin Doyle sliced into the perfectly cooked steak on his plate, the sound of his knife against fine china echoing through the vast emptiness of his mansion's dining room. The television mounted on the wall provided the only company during his solitary dinner, a ritual he had maintained for years. As he reached for the remote to tune into the evening news, he reflected on how his massive wealth had done little to fill the void in his life. 15 years ago, Ben had been struggling to launch his business, working multiple jobs while his entrepreneurial ventures repeatedly failed. His wife, Cindy, tired of financial instability and broken promises, had divorced him and taken their 10-year-old daughter, Leanne, Lee for short. The court had granted Cindy primary custody given Ben's precarious financial situation, though he had been permitted visitation rights. For the first few years, Ben had sent birthday gifts, called regularly, and visited whenever possible. Then Cindy remarried a wealthy executive who received a transfer to a different state. After the move, Ben's calls went unanswered, his gifts were returned, and his visitation requests denied. When he finally hired a lawyer to enforce his parental rights, he discovered Cindy had told Lee that her father had abandoned them, choosing his business ambitions over his family. "She believed I didn't want her," Ben whispered to himself, the familiar pain resurfacing as he took another bite of steak. Ironically, losing his family had fueled Ben's drive to succeed. With nothing left to lose, he had thrown himself into work, eventually patenting a revolutionary software algorithm that catapulted him into wealth. Now, at 52, Benjamin Doyle was worth millions, with a sprawling estate and a corner office in the downtown high-rise bearing his name. Yet, he dined alone every night, watching the news, before retreating to an empty bed. As the news broadcast shifted to a segment on women's empowerment, Ben reached for the remote, uninterested in the human interest stories. But his hand froze when a familiar face appeared on screen. Older now, but unmistakable. "We're speaking with residents of the Pinewood community," the reporter was saying, gesturing toward a young woman standing outside a weathered mobile home. "This is Leanne, a single mother of twins who works as a seamstress to support her family." Ben's heart hammered against his ribs as he memorized the location displayed at the bottom of the screen. Before the segment ended, he had grabbed his keys and was racing toward his car. The Pinewood Mobile Home Park was only 20 minutes from Ben's estate, though it existed in an entirely different economic reality. As twilight descended, Ben navigated between rows of aging trailers, his luxury sedan conspicuously out of place. He found Unit 47 at the end of a poorly lit lane, its exterior showing signs of neglect, with peeling paint and a sagging front step. Ben's hand trembled as he knocked. The door opened to reveal a young woman with tired eyes that widened in shock. "Dad?" Lee's voice was barely audible. "What are you doing here?" "I saw you on the news," Ben replied, his voice breaking. "May I come in?" Lee hesitated before stepping aside, allowing Ben into a space barely large enough to accommodate a small kitchen table, a worn sofa, and a pair of toddler beds where two small girls slept soundly. "Your daughters?" Ben asked softly. "Emily and Grace." Lee nodded, unconsciously positioning herself between the sleeping children and her father. "They're 3. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them until Lee finally spoke. "Why now? After all these years of nothing?" "Nothing?" Ben's forehead creased. "Lee, I tried everything to stay in your life. Your mother blocked me at every turn." "That's not true," Lee countered, though uncertainty flickered across her face. "Mom said you walked away because we were holding you back from your precious business dreams." Ben withdrew his phone and pulled up a photo gallery. "I've documented everything. The birthday gifts returned, the legal letters, the voicemails. I even hired a private investigator when you both disappeared after the move." Lee's hands shook as she scrolled through years of evidence, wrapped presents with return to sender stamps, court documents, even old voicemails to Cindy begging to speak with his daughter. "Mom told me you never tried to contact us," Lee whispered, tears gathering. "I believed her all these years." "What happened, Lee? How did you end up here, so close to me without my knowledge?" Lee wiped her eyes. "Mom died of cancer 4 years ago. My stepfather remarried almost immediately and made it clear I wasn't welcome. I met Ryan, who seemed kind and ambitious. We moved here because housing was affordable while he launched his career." Her bitter laugh conveyed the outcome. He disappeared 6 months after the girls were born. I've been making it work ever since. One of the twins stirred, rubbing her eyes as she sat up. Mommy? Who's that man? Lee lifted the child. This is your grandfather, Emily. Ben's eyes filled with tears as the sleepy child regarded him curiously. Let me help you, Lee, he said softly. Not to take over your life, but to give you and the girls opportunities you deserve. I can't just uproot them again. My guest house is sitting empty. You'd have privacy, space for the girls to play safely, and time to figure out your next steps. When hesitation showed on her face, Ben added, No strings attached. If it doesn't work out, I'll help you find something better than this. Lee looked around the cramped trailer where she'd been struggling to make ends meet. I don't want charity. It's not charity when it's family, Ben replied. It's 15 years of support I owe you. 3 months later, Lee sat in the sunlit kitchen of the guest house, watching her daughters chase butterflies in the garden. The sound of a car announced Ben's arrival from the office. How was the interview? He asked, setting down his briefcase. I got the junior marketing position, Lee beamed. Not because I'm your daughter. I made them promise to treat my application like any other. The director said my portfolio showed real talent. Ben's smile conveyed his pride. I never doubted it. Their relationship had evolved cautiously. There had been difficult conversations, painful revelations about Cindy's manipulations, and moments when the years apart seemed an insurmountable gulf. But they had persisted, building new memories while acknowledging what had been lost. The girls want to show you their new painting, Lee said. They've been working on it all day. As Ben stepped outside to admiring cries of, Grandpa! And eager little hands pulling him toward their masterpiece, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. His dinner table now hosted family meals filled with conversation and laughter. His weekends featured trips to the park and impromptu dance parties in the living room. Lee watched from the doorway as her father knelt between his granddaughters, giving their artwork the same serious consideration he gave multi-million-dollar proposals. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something meaningful, a foundation upon which they were building something new. Their reconciliation hadn't erased 15 years of separation, but it had given them permission to create a future together. And in that future, neither Ben nor Lee would ever have to face life's challenges alone again.